Good morning. Good morning. When Steve was telling me he was going to talk about peace, perfect peace, I said, oh, I can remember the first time when peace meant so much to me. And I said, you've got to do Isaiah 26, verse 3. And so he said, oh, okay, that's already in my word. And I said, well, I've got a testimony about that. How many of you have an experience where the word God gave you just carried you through it? I mean, I know there's many, many here, and I'm sure many of you could testify up here like I am of that amazing peace that comes over you in a great time of trial. And Steve and I were in Alaska. I was quite young. I probably had Stephen by then as a baby. And Steve was out on the Alaska Highway. We were back in the interior, about 2 miles off the Alaska Highway. I hardly ever came out. But he got to go, and he was on his way to Fairbanks, I believe, and there was a terrible accident. It was a very bad morning with fog and maybe even snow, I'm not sure. Well, anyway, there was a car that was parked in front of his car, and there were no lights on it, nothing, and they just hit it head on. And the steering wheel crammed right up into him. Now, at that time, there were no cell phones. I had no way of knowing anything was wrong. But I did get word that Steve had been in a terrible accident, and they knew there was internal bleeding. That's all that was given to me. And I mean, right then, the Lord himself dropped this word in my heart. Isaiah 26, verse 3. You will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you, because he trusts in you. Trust in the Lord forever. And that word came to me, and I said, right, I'm going to keep my mind upon you. So I just praised, and I worshiped, and I exalted the Lord throughout that time, and I just said, I trust you, Lord, I believe you, Lord, take care of him, heal him, do whatever needs to be done. And I just continually would keep my mind and praising him and exalting him. Well, later we did find out that he did have an internal bleeding, but then when they took him in, he was all clear. So I do believe the good Lord touched him and healed him at that time. And that was probably the first traumatic event I had as a young married wife. But then another experience that I had not too long ago, my son James at age 26, Stephen drives up in his truck at 1 o'clock in the morning. Danny Silk happened to be staying with us. That was when he was here preaching. And I heard the truck, and Steve said, this isn't good. And I said, no, it's not. And so Stephen comes and says, Dad, we got to get to the hospital at Highlands. They're taking James. He's just had a heart attack. He's 26 years old, as fit as a fiddle. And I'm going, oh, a heart attack. And so my tendency at times like that would have been to just lose it, and be all afraid and worried. But a supernatural peace. And I know some of you can testify of the same thing, just flooded me. And instead of me just getting all hyper and all upset, I stayed calm. And I thanked the Lord and trusted him, and we got there. And of course, he had a complete heart attack. His heart was functioning on 15%. They never really did find out what caused the heart attack, but I believe it's probably induced from drugs, because he had been taking... Did they give him, what was the name of that one?
Cipro.
Cipro, because he'd been on a ministry trip in Guatemala and had a bug, and the doctor had given him Cipro. And from the time he gave it to him, he called Steve anyway, saying, don't take that stuff. I mean, I'm hurting. I've got pain all over. It's terrible. And don't get it, Dad. Don't let him give it to you. And by Friday, he drove himself to the Highlands Hospital, and he'd had a full-blown heart attack. I kind of feel like it was provoked by that. I don't know, but they couldn't find any reason. But nevertheless, I just want to give testimony to Jesus that you can walk in him, and he will give us that peace that passes understanding. When we don't, it's not because we deserve it. It's not because I was doing so great. It's because he's a loving Father, and he loves us, and it's available to us. And also, keep trusting in this word. Keep taking this word in. Keep reading it. Keep making it yours, because that's how the Holy Spirit could drop into my heart Isaiah 26:3. And then I held on to that word. And that's how he can speak to us, is through this awesome, wonderful, powerful word.
Amen.